Hiya! Welcome to this, my 42nd episode of VideoFuzzy. I'm your host, Terry J. Aman, and in this installment, titled Life, This Podcast, and Everything, I celebrate crossing into my fourth binder of DVDs in my classic collection and the wonderful things I found just since my last entry, including proof that Aaron Sorkin's Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip may be the mystical center of all reality. In my current collection, the fourth season of The Magicians kicks off, Surviving R. Kelly was just jaw-dropping, and TNT's I Am the Night gets off to a great start. Welcome to the show.
He doesn't have that on video, does he? We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy.
So, as I'm writing this, I'm taking advantage of the brief respite North Dakota is experiencing between two rather significant winter weather events, happy February everyone, to venture forth into the city brew. They've got moody jazz on tap, and I know I'm jazzed about the new milestone I've crossed in this project. As of this week, I broke into my fourth binder of DVDs in my classic collection. I broke into my third binder 1 year ago, February of 2018, so for the moment, we can determine some momentum for this project. At the current rate of recording transfer, 2 hours per DVD, barring significant changes, I should get all 13 of my binders processed by 2028. I know that's not valid because at some point I shift 6 hours per disc and that processing time per binder will triple, but for the moment I can anticipate cataloging my entire collection before I'm 60. On that happy thought, yay, at least 10 more years of VideoFuzzy, let's dive into my Friday night feature.
Friday night feature.
In September, I encountered the first half of Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, the first appearance of this phenomenal show since I started the podcast portion of this project, and forgive me, I will address the show itself momentarily, but this show appears as a supernova, a standard candle by which to gauge progress and distance traveled in space and time, and if you'll indulge me, I'd like to take a moment to explore that aspect of it as well. Up until this past fall, at the appearance of the first half of the pilot episode, I actually had several episodes from the latter half of the show's first and only season, episode 16 onward, back when my recording and archiving of this show was still somewhat contemporaneous. The first episode I cataloged in this collection, episode 16, the 4 a.m. Miracle, aired in the middle of February in 2007, 12 years ago this month, and appeared 56 discs into this process of converting my VHS tapes to DVDs, a process I believe I started in January of that year. I still had more than 2,500 DVDs to process at that point, 2,700 if you count my current collection, which you may as well. I've been building that since 2017. Anyway, disc 56, divide 56 by 3 and you get some 19 tapes I'd been able to process as of that moment. This was one of the freshest episodes among them, along with reasonably current episodes from the latter second season of Prison Break and the latter third season of Boston Legal. The series finale of Studio 60 aired in June of 2007 and showed up on disc 158. The last episode from that initial archiving effort shows up on disc 190, and then the series vanishes again in this collection until the first half of the pilot episode appears in disc 542, where I encountered it last fall and promptly lost the thread again until this past week on disc 616, at which point it's impossible for me to describe my joy, my utter joy and elation that I would be able to keep a promise I made to you lo these many months since. I love this show. I have loved this show since I first saw it in the fall of 2006. The show itself seems to have been written and developed and presented by a troupe of actors specifically for me to enjoy, well, at any rate, according to the database at the Futon Critic. By the series finale, the show was among the top shows on the network for its time slot, but was still topping out at a few million in the key 18 to 49 demographic, which, sure, that's fine for summer viewing, but that's still a heavy lift on the overheads for the talent pool involved, and I'll get to that in a minute. Not to mention that people were confused as to exactly what this show was. It starred Matthew Perry and D.L. Hewley and Steven Weber in a sketch comedy setting, and yet it was a drama. This was the guided tour of the proverbial sausage factory, watching comedy get made. We almost never saw the show that they were producing, Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, the weekly 90-minute sketch comedy laugh riot. Now, this taut, tightly written drama mostly covered the other some 10,000 minutes of the week, the personality conflicts, the egos countervailing social forces, the flawed human seeking redemption, trying to do right, striving to put on a good show under impossible pressures, towering fates and the universe against them. This is tracking into the other problem I freely acknowledge with this show. In the first full post-pilot episode, they reference the show's being bulletproof, the unmissable harbinger of the weekend's entertainment for the hip young cognoscenti, who network executives adorably asserted were getting their entertainment news from commercials running on sketch comedy shows airing in the graveyard ratings basement of Friday nights. No wonder the network setting for this production was fictional. They also asserted that the show could be preempted by any news event, which is just simply reality, but is a direct comment on the stakes for this production. Well, what happens is this flagship sketch comedy marvel takes center stage in the aftermath of the on-air meltdown of Judd Hirsch as Wes Mendel 3 days before Amanda Peet, as president of NBS, Jordan McDear, was to assume her new position. Just a quick aside to bring that point home. A network show is a network show. There's lots of money, time, and energy invested, and a lot of on-air and behind-the-scenes personnel are counting on its success. But if it vanished tomorrow, well, the stakes are a lot lower than the vast majority of everything that happened on, say, Sorkin's earlier project, The West Wing. Anyway, Jordan immediately reaches out to two guys with a long history with the show, Bradley Whitford as Danny Tripp and Matthew Perry as Matt Albee. Danny confides in Matt that he's mainly available for the job because he tested positive for cocaine use and needed 18 months of clean results before he could produce movies, and Matt's history with the show involves a messy breakup with Sarah Paulson's character, Top Banana Harriet Hayes, and Matt's disdain for her religious following. Matt also spills the beans about Danny's drug test to the network brass. Well, Jordan already knew, but her boss, Steven Weber as NBS chair Jack Rudolph, did not. And in other fun reveals, Harriet learns Ada Field as Studio 60 actress Jeannie was at Matt's home over the weekend and assumes the worst. To be fair, some of this is from the second episode of the series, The Cold Open, but having waited for nearly half a year to talk about this show, I'm approaching this as the second half of the pilot, which energy-wise is the right way to watch this, because rather than the anticlimactic learn everyone's names, cool, okay, I guess we're doing this, I mean, of course you are, otherwise what even is this? The production gets into some personal histories, sets some stakes, and builds to a towering and evocative song and dance number, the clever, very model of a modern network TV show, and all of writer and showrunner Aaron Sorkin's very favorite wish fulfillment, the major general piece from the Gilbert and Sullivan's light opera Pirates of Penzance, in a song and dance number that manages to be very clever and tedious at exactly the same time. Don't get me wrong, watching Sarah Paulson as the devoutly religious Harriet Hayes downstage, front and center, sing of the joys of an intellectual reach-around, and then react in horror when her backup chorus gets a little more explicit about what that in fact entails is delicious, along with the comic reveal of Danny's otherwise scandalous, but by now it's common knowledge, history of drug use. From the vantage point of this drama, Sorkin lobs ordnance at many favorite targets. Cowardice in the face of religious fervor / bigotry, which I believe translates to any public expression of faith. That might not be fair. Leverage of religious faith to impose a point of view and societal outcome on people who do not share that faith. Aaron Sorkin does not care, nor do any of his characters, if the planet's population spends its evenings and weekends worshipping Jesus, Buddha, or Allah, let 1,000 flowers bloom. But so help you that belief trespass in the public sphere. You fie for shame. No, I'm not suddenly rah-rah Theocracy over here, but this is one of those writers it's hard to locate a balance, and to be fair, he's far less cartoony than some, and does write lines that acknowledge shades of gray. Anyway, he targets networks that cave to religious objections, which in 2006 the Parents Television Council and 1 Million Moms groups, etc. probably needed some reining in. Also, in an especially "you kids get off my lawn" volley of verbal artillery, Matt lambasts his writing staff for dressing like junior high schoolers. I can't wait to hear what his chief objection to writers Ricky and Ron, codename Beavis and Hackboy, is going to be. All of this sounds like I have some problem with any of this. Not at all. When you're approaching sketch comedy as a dramatic setting, you have a lot to explore. Network discomfort, personal histories, personality conflicts, social commentary. Sorkin wrote deeply in small environments like Sports Night. He wrote meaningfully on a world stage in The West Wing. He explored the intersection of loyalty and duty in a sexist environment in A Few Good Men. He outlined some social history for us in The Social Network, and in Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, he turned a lens onto America's media landscape. It's a thoughtfully explored, genuinely entertaining snapshot of a moment in time, a moment of transition. In not too terribly long afterwards, streaming services would be competing for attention, production would be scrambling for resources. At this point, we're barely a year out from the writer's strike. I don't know what a show like this would look like now, but it would be different. As for what happened, this brilliant, clever show featured top talent, people at the top of their game. Bradley Whitford, Matthew Perry, Amanda Peet, Sarah friggin' Paulson. Along with Sorkin's crackling dialogue and their snappy delivery, how could it fail? Well, I'm not clear that it did, but winning at Spot didn't, in 2007, necessarily translate to actually saleable numbers. A few million viewers. Seriously, like the number of people watching the actual Saturday Night Live, according to the Futon critic, 4.1 million, maybe a couple million in the demo, in prime time on a weeknight when you're trying to pay for that kind of talent. That's not a lot of people to go in on high-end vehicles and diet pills and medication for erectile dysfunction. Cross Connection. I mentioned in my intro that this show, Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, could potentially be the center of all reality. And what I wanted to say about that, since I'm mentioning all these extraordinarily talented cast members, I track Bradley Whitford through his previous work with Sorkin and Josh Lyman in The West Wing, where he also worked with former Friends star Matthew Perry. Perry tracks to Courtney Cox at Friends and a guest spot on Cougar Town, where she worked with the inimitable Ian Gomez, who I recently chatted about his guest appearance in Reaper. The Studio 60 appearance by Sarah Paulson traces directly to American Horror Story, as well as Nip Tuck, as well as Desperate Housewives, as well as Grey's Anatomy, which also featured Mary McDonnell, and that gets us to The Closer, and Donnie Darko, and Battlestar Galactica, which gets us to Mark A. Shepard, which gets us all the way from Joss Whedon's Firefly to Supernatural. McDonnell also gets us to Fargo, which, okay, side note, tracks us through everything the Coen brothers ever did, from Nicolas Cage to George Clooney, so now we're into the original Batman franchise, which connects us through Michael Keaton to Beetlejuice and Adam Baldwin, and everything from Nip Tuck again, which grabs Famke Janssen and pulls in Whedon's X-Men. Fargo also pulls in Jean Smart, which now we've got Legion, we've got Samantha Who, we've got Designing Women, we've got 24, for Christ's sakes, everyone who's ever been involved in that, like Kiefer Sutherland, Kim Raver, I just ran into her again in the pilot episode of The Nine, spoiler alert, and oh hey, Marilyn Rashkub, running directly to Chris Hardwick on At Midnight, which pulls in Ron Funches to We Bare Bears, Paul F. Tompkins to BoJack Horseman, which tracks me through Will Arnett to everyone who was ever involved in Arrested Development, including David Cross, which gets me to Jack Black in Kung Fu Panda, and what the hell? This podcast I listened to, Who Are These Podcasts, episode 130, they made fun of something called The Official Podcast, who once had an interview with David Cross and bobbled it badly. Weird. BoJack also pulls in Alison Brie, which gets us to the Lego Movie and Will Arnett again, as well as Michael Cera in Arrested Development again, as well as Scott Pilgrim. Alison Brie also pulls in Joel McHale in Community, which gets us to Jim Rash, which also gets us to Samantha Who, so Melissa McCarthy and Christina Applegate, which gets us Allison Janney. No, not Allison Janney. I was thinking of her character in Drop Dead Gorgeous. She gets us Katie friggin' Seagal through Married with Children, and that gets us to everyone in Eli Stone, everyone Matt Groening has ever worked with through Turanga Leela, and everyone Kurt Sutter has ever worked with through Sons of Anarchy, including, oh hey, everyone on The Shield. But wait, where does that leave Allison Janney? Well, there was Matthew Perry in Mr. Sunshine, or how about Bradley Whitford in The West Wing? Duh. In fact, a lot of people worked in The West Wing, including Mary McCormick, who helmed In Plain Sight on USA, which also featured Whitford, and then Kristen Chenoweth, who gets us from Pushing Daisies through everyone involved in Trial and Error. I've got Whitford starring with Colin Hanks in The Good Guys and Saving Mr. Banks, which is on my DVR right now, waiting for me to finish this and go watch it. He was also in Joss Whedon's Cabin in the Woods, which links to Serenity, which, oh hey, also featured Sarah Paulson. Whitford was also on Go On, also with Matthew Perry, and he had a guest spot on Parks and Rec, which I'll mention Comedy Central has been airing that from the beginning, and I'm building up a huge slug of those on my DVR, really looking forward to watching and archiving those because they star the also inimitable Amy Poehler, who made a very brief appearance at a critical moment in The Good Place, so that's tracked in. Parks and Rec also gave us Nick Offerman and his wife, National Treasure Megan Mullally, both of whom get us to Will and Grace. How do I get at John Hamm? Well, Mad Men with Elizabeth Moss, on The West Wing with Bradley Whitford. How do I get to David Tennant? Worked with Allison Janney on DuckTales, worked with Bradley Whitford in The West Wing. So now that's everyone involved with Doctor Who, including a direct link from Tennant to Kylie Minogue in one of the Christmas specials. So now to everyone involved with Gallivant, which includes Timothy Robinson. So now we've pulled in the entire cast of Psych, but wait, they were already there thanks to Dule Hill with Bradley Whitford on Ta-da, The West Wing. Look, I'm not going to take any more time with this right now, but this version of 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, oh, you want him? Boom, worked with Sorkin and Few Good Men. Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip has ties throughout my media collection. Now, it's easy to argue, well, Sorkin pulled in talented people at the top of their game. Talented people at the top of their game will get a lot of work, and a lot of work gets them in a lot of shows. But what I'm saying is damn near every show in my archive I can track with relative ease to someone involved in Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, usually a star, which is insane given that the show ran for an season from 2006 to 2007. Shows like Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. Oh, one more you want? Oh, Will Smith? Boom. I've got D.L. Hughley working with Will Smith on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. There you go. Anyway, shows like Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip are, frankly, the reason I've got this media archive. Sure, I'll skip past seasons of Numbers and Bones and Brothers and Sisters and Criminal Minds. Cool in their own way, but not all of them and not all the way through. Now mostly just a not great use of space in my collection. But occasionally you get standout productions worthy of preserving, worth tracking down, worth the time and effort to catalog, and to lift up for deeper discussion. Joyous. Indeed, and hardly for the first or last time. Thank you, Sorkin & Co. Well done.
Diving into the classic collection.
Perhaps not surprisingly, close as I was to my goal of breaking into a new binder, I plowed through the final discs and was just gobsmacked by the wonderful things I found, any of which would have been worthy of being featured in their own right. I will start with a damaged second season episode of Dead Like Me, an episode that filled my heart with love and longing when I first encountered it a dozen years ago when it was edited for rebroadcast on Sci-Fi. Back then I was still a believer, still attended church, and as I've been my entire life, was adopted as well as bisexual and, oh yeah, lonely, so this story spoke to me on a lot of levels. It's still kind of annoying that in my recording of this, I'd forgotten to hit record coming back from a commercial once, so I'm missing one of the chapters. Most of these are about 42 minutes long to air properly on Sci-Fi, and this one only takes up 35 minutes on my disc. I feel like I do have a complete copy in this collection somewhere, but regardless, I kept the good part. At his request, Laura Harris as Grim Reaper Daisy Adair brings her reap, Neil Maffin as Stan Samuels, to a church where, as a ghost, he begins to rage against God, calling God a bastard. Ranting in his spectral, ineffectual state, Stan is seriously ticked off about not being able to grab a hymnal and smash a stained glass window. In the moment, the depth and pain of this portrayal shines through. He's a gay man, a child of God, and a lifetime believing himself unloved and rejected by his creator and for his very being outside the ambit of God's love. Can I tell you, writing this, just remembering this scene, seen again more than a decade and circumstances a lifetime removed since I first encountered it, I find myself moved to tears. I don't know how I'll be recording it. I'll power through. We'll power through. But the depth of his anger and despair, demanding to know why, it pours from him in his rage. And at that moment, a group of vandals outside the church smash the window, and in the next moment, as Daisy runs to investigate, Stan, in that very brokenness, sees the image of an ascended spirit shining, reaching out to him as desperate to express loving acceptance as he is for the first time in his life to experience it. Damn it, Dead Like Me show creator Brian Fuller, those were my damn feels. Wiped away actual tears writing this. People experience separation in their life, it's true. All different kinds and in all different degrees, but oh wow, the man who watched this in 2007 or thereabouts, the broken man who sobbed as he watched this, that sad, lonely man with all of his separation anxieties. I can't go to him, tell him, let him know it's going to be okay, that he's going to find love, he's going to be loved and repaired and made whole, but this small image, Brian, this lost and broken person you set in a church and allowed him to express himself fully and for the universe to react in that moment in a way it never else does. Thank you. I needed that. The world needs it. God, whatever God-shaped space inside us, when we're feeling lost and unloved, that glowing spirit reaching out to love us and lift us up, whatever that is, however that works, whatever that ends up being, that moment was healing, and I love you for it. Thank you. So yeah, I could have featured that pretty easily. And also, you may recall from my conversation with Nathan Irwin in episode 30, my longtime love of Monty Python. This was not that tape, the first original overdubbed and damaged tape I had since the 1980s. But yeah, as I closed out this binder, disc 625, I encountered a disc full of Monty Python episodes. These recorded from rebroadcast on the BBC America, episodes I hadn't necessarily encountered before and edited differently from other versions I'd seen, so I really enjoyed discovering these. I also found another episode of Wire in the Blood, the season 4 premiere, something like 2 hours long, and oh my god, so ridiculous. Who was writing this? How were these things getting made? How was I keeping these things? Starts out with a smarmy, almost Avengers-style confrontation from a solicitor reopening a conviction that originated from a profile Robson Green as Dr. Tony Hill apparently cobbled together, and I'm like, what? If his services are pulled in to assist the police, he's still not making the arrest or gathering the evidence. His input is external to the entire chain of evidence, but we're meant to understand that his involvement tainted the entire investigation because he was on antidepressants or something. Even if that's the case, what the hell is meant to be gained by sitting across from him and... Wait... What precisely is he being accused of? The case seems to revolve around someone who solicits call girls to be chained up as he enters their bedchamber, but surprise, he kidnaps and kills them. Well, more fool them. Protect yourself, meet in public places, or if the rape fantasy is to be tied from the jump, at least insist on having your pimp in the next room. This wouldn't need to happen more than once for London's working girls to take necessary precautions, and for it would never get as far as luring the killer using one of your own cops as a decoy, and then, holy Christ, she herself is kidnapped. What the actual... Did you guys at any point in this process, subject this storyline to, well, first, some Goram editing? How the hell did you need 2 hours for this nonsense? And then, secondly, and more importantly, a friggin' laugh test? Wire in the Blood, I just can't with you. What else? Well, I found so many awesome episodes of The Shield, including the co-pilot Back in Time backstory with Michael Chiklis' Vince Mackey in a suit and the formation of the strike team. Excellent storytelling and development in a dark and brilliantly plotted production. I found the pilot episode of The Nine, which I talked about back in episode 2 of this effort. The 9th episode turned up on disc 229, the very first disc I cataloged since starting this podcasting effort. The only other episode I cataloged was episode 8 on disc 199. The pilot turned up in my cataloging efforts this past week on disc 623. I also found the 4th season Sherry Noble episode of Nip Tuck featuring Little House on the Prairie half-pint Melissa Gilbert, all grown up now, seeking to repair a mutilated breast. Oh wow, her dog bit her when she tried to break up a fight with another dog, and don't tell her husband, he'll have him put down. End of that episode, Dean friggin' Norris. Yeah, not yet, but that Dean Norris, Walter White's badass DEA brother-in-law from Breaking Bad and Uncle Daddy from Claws, as her husband, Mark, confronts her in a big reveal. Turns out while he was deployed overseas, she'd smeared peanut butter all over herself and got her dog to lick it off, and I guess the dog chomped all the way through once. Holy Christ, this show is wild. Also, episode before that one, Game of Thrones' Peter Dinklage hires on as a nanny when Julia realizes she's suffering from postpartum depression after Connor's birth and needs some help. Oh, so many things. 2 significant South Park episodes turned up. Well, 3, I suppose, if you count the Elian Gonzalez commentary in Quintuplets 2000 from Season 4 on Disc 624. Otherwise, I found the episode featuring the whore-off between Mr. Slave and Paris Hilton from Season 8 on Disc 608, an episode in which Butters is heard to mutter the phrase, "I'm a bad bear." Oh, and the one featuring Cartman's guest spot on Maury, whatever, I do what I want, from Season 6 on Disc 614. Not to be outdone, The Simpsons present their interpretations of Bible stories in the 10th season episode of The Simpsons Bible Stories. That one found on disc 613 in this collection. Eureka's first season finale is in this set, and the first season finale of Reaper, along with the series premiere of In Plain Sight, the third season premiere of Desperate Housewives, strongly hinting Orson Hodge may have killed his first wife, Alma. Also, the series premiere of Heroes. I've got Mike Myers hosting the 2008 MTV Movie Awards, and on a related note, I found a music video with Tenacious D singing and promoting the cinematic premiere of The Pick of Destiny. Oh, and here's another nip tuck, this one featuring Dr. Troy having sex with Rosie O'Donnell as lottery winner Dawn Budge, who, oh wow, she's paying him $400,000 to have sex with her and then talking through the whole thing. Are you all the way in? I could go for some mac and cheese. Wow, that was unfulfilling. Look, I don't know what she's used to. Oh wait, yes I do. Earlier in that episode, the man she took as her second husband, who she incidentally caught having sex with her daughter, she described him as being hung like a mouse. So seriously, at his least inspired, Dr. Troy, in the words of another red-hot TV lover, Dr. Sheldon Cooper, would be giving her lady parts a proper jostling. My final potential entry for feature for this installment, well, apart from the significant 2007 documentary Prison Nation off National Geographic, was the sci-fi presentation of Michael Crichton's 2003 movie Timeline, in which present-day archaeologists somehow find themselves in 13th century France. I'm intrigued, but I didn't rewatch it, and it's not jogging any memories. So far, the best portrayal I've ever seen in theory and presentation of internally consistent time travel is 12 Monkeys. I don't remember why offhand, but I believe I have got a copy of that in this collection somewhere, so once I find it, I'll probably revisit Timeline and then watch a double feature with 12 Monkeys and give it a good compare and contrast. Until then, that's just something to look forward to. So many discs, so many shows, so many of them worthy of comment. Damn, do I love this project. Current collection. In my current collection, I wanted to highlight a new production that premiered on TNT recently called I Am the Night. I don't know a lot of the storyline behind it, but I suspect I soon will. Previews link the show to the unsolved Black Dahlia murder in LA in the 1940s, but the events in the pilot episode seem to focus on Nevada in, I want to say, the 1960s. A black woman has raised a white girl, Fauna, as her own from infancy. Now a teenager, Fauna finds her birth certificate and learns of the adoption, learns she is not of mixed race. She heads to Los Angeles to meet her grandfather, the, by then somewhat notorious George Huddle. Her story becomes intertwined with that of a down-and-out photojournalist/paparazzo, Jay Singletary, played with intensity by Chris Pine, which unfortunately highlights the lesser acting talents of others in this production. Well, be fair, I've only seen the pilot, and it is a basic cable drama. There's gonna be a range. And India Isley as Fauna has done fantastic work. So far what I've seen, she's doing excellent work. She's had plenty to do already. It's still really fuzzy where this is going. It looked for a moment like maybe the set of Eyes Wide Shut, but slow as the start might have been, I'm on board, strapped in, and looking forward to seeing where we go next. The 6-part documentary Surviving R. Kelly on Lifetime was amazing. From a person who basically all I knew from R. Kelly was Aaliyah, I Believe I Can Fly, the In the Closet series, an Eminem video, and the Late Show punchlines. It was a punch in the gut to listen to these women testify about the levels and layers of controlling and abusive behavior this guy allegedly put them through. Well, to be fair, each episode opens with R. Kelly's blanket denial about these accusations, but to hear these patterns of behavior outlined independently by so many different and unconnected sources, well, since this production aired, a couple of courts have reopened the cases, and we'll see how well all these non-disclosure agreements hold up. The documentary raised the notion that no one cared because these victims were black women, black girls in many cases. My suspicion is that no one cared because R. Kelly was wealthy, and a lot of times hush money works as advertised. I've been watching quite a few cool productions, including a Lifetime presentation of Escaping the Madhouse, the Nellie Bly story, starring Christina Ricci in the title role and Judith Effin Light as her warden. Can we just... Congress, if you're honestly not going to be doing anything about anything else, can we proclaim this woman a national treasure yet? Along with her towering performances last summer in The Assassination of Gianni Versace, her dark turn as Matron Grady elevates her well beyond her roots in sitcoms, soap operas, and telenovelas. Oh wow, how did I miss that she was Claire Mead in Ugly Betty? Well, she's amazing, and Congress should definitely recognize her or something. As for the movie, it opens on Nellie Bly in consultation with a young, handsome, we're thinking good guy doctor, but as the movie progresses, while he plies her with his considerable charms, he's not interested in helping her escape the confines of the asylum. You'll recall investigative journalist Nellie Bly went undercover, getting herself committed to an insane asylum to report on conditions there. Well, there were women who were in there because they were foreign and didn't speak English. Not to mention her account of the place suggested that if women weren't mad when they were admitted, the conditions would get them there. We pieced together some treatment she underwent as she was admitted, whereby she lost her memory, and society wags larked out to the asylum to see if she was their missing wife. While lost in her fog of confusion, she distracts Matron and regains her notes in her notebook. She's starting to remember who she is and why she's there, though as Matron Grady damns her in one Catch-22 confrontation, you'd have to be crazy to get yourself committed to an insane asylum. That's a fair cop. In the end, her boyfriend, Bats, visits the asylum and sparks her most critical flashes of memory. She gets agitated, trying to run to him, and Grady throws her in solitary. She's actually trying to drown Nellie in a tub when Bats breaks in and catches her in the act. He lifts her out and saves her life. Nellie struggles to consciousness, regains her memory, and breaks that story wide open. It is a heroic portrayal of journalistic triumph. Lifetime is definitely on a roll. I caught the Season 2 premiere of Grownish on Freeform recently and enjoyed it. I watched most of Season 1 and thought they did a good job. When I saw the series returned, I wanted to check it out. The writing is meta, sort of self-referential in a way that people this age would see their lives as partially from outside their own point of view. Yara Shahidi partially narrates the production, occasionally addresses the camera, and finds, I think, an engaging balance between showing and telling. She recaps Season 1 in a montage that also serves to introduce us to the new apartment they're renting, but it's awful, so they throw a cleanup party, which, if that were really a thing, everyone would mostly have been lounging on their phones while, like, 3 people cleaned, the ones who actually live there. But it's a show, so everyone mostly helped out, and since it's a show, we all know it needs conflict and drama, which arises when her gone-for-3 months boyfriend returns to campus without calling her, and she hears about it from someone else. Seriously, deal. Love her, love this show, which is very cute, but you guys run with that, I'm good. My concern with A Million Little Things is, well, I still haven't seen like the first 4 episodes or so of the thing, but also, okay, when they came back off of Christmas break, there was almost like a whole new vibe to navigate. The storyline jumps back to the day before John committed suicide. John committed suicide? Oh my god, that's what the whole show has been about. If that's a spoiler, you're not a fan. Shut up. Anyway, my relatively lackadaisical approach to spoilers has been pointed out to me, and I do care. I always try to gauge where we are in space and time as I'm running this podcast / highlight reel, and if something happened more than a year ago, like 90% of the focus of this podcast, I'm going to spoil away. For instance, the existence of Season 6 and 7 of something called Buffy the Vampire Slayer clues you into the permanence of her death at the end of Season 5. She dies in Season 5? She died in Season 1. These aren't spoilers! For the remaining 10%, I know this podcast is not where you're tuning in for breaking news on current shows. The turnaround on this production is usually at least a week, and even so, for stuff like movies where yeah, not everyone gets to opening weekend. Hell, we almost never get to opening weekend. But I'm going to try to be way more circumspect on stuff you're splashing out that kind of dosh to go see. And sitting here right now, I'm going to talk about the Season 3 finale of The Good Place coming up here, and I will talk about stuff that happened, but in all reality, hearing about something on a podcast and actually experiencing the story as it plays out on the screen are 2 entirely different experiences. In short, Bruce Willis was dead the whole time. Bah. If you want to see something, you can probably stream it. But yeah, my main concern with A Million Little Things is that the show is overburdened with characters, all of whom get screen time every week, and their issues are not all equally compelling. When Romani Malco as Rome Howard felt judged by his father for not being able to fix his bathroom sink, as well as for taking prescription medication for his depression, How is that even a thing? A subplot. Screw it. Get a friend to help if your relationship with your dad is that awkward and judgy. It was the same amount of weight and attention as a woman dealing with the debilitating effects of cancer on her body. It was given the same weight and attention as Rome's wife's awkwardness asking her mother for a loan to start her business. What I'm saying is that there's a lot going on. Some of these stories can progress off camera. Oh my god, I gave this show way too many chances. By the time I was just done with Brothers and Sisters, they were bringing in new siblings every season. The big reveal is, oh my god, suddenly someone isn't biologically related. Well, thank god. I was beginning to suspect Sally Field was related somehow potentially to everyone in California. So, no, to the writers of A Million Little Things, maybe there's a cast member who hasn't told everyone he knows he's on medication to control his depression and doesn't feel like he needs to. Fine. Hey, if you got some actual plot development to explore, by Jove, let's have at that. Yeesh. Speaking of spoilers, The Good Place. Scoot ahead if you're avoiding. The Good Place. Still with me? The Good Place aired its third season finale, and I feel like I'm watching... What am I watching? I'm watching a vision board by Douglas Adams play out on my television. This show is, at its heart, even wackier than Dirk Gently because of its occasionally no-rules physics. The Soul Squad is recreating Michael's what had become his Good Place experiment after Maya Rudolph as the judge visits Earth and discovers there's millions of unintended consequences for every action or inaction she takes. Life is so complicated no one can even get into the Good Place anymore. They found out from the accounting department a few episodes back that no one has gotten into the Good Place in more than 5 centuries. So the judge agrees to an experiment to see if people are just awful or whether they're worth saving. They set up the experiment in the medium place, which we haven't really explored completely, so that will be new, and, surprise, they'll be running the experiment on people chosen specifically to make life hell for Team Cockroach. Tahani has to deal with the celebrity blogger who tormented her entire life, and Chidi's got a free ride on this. They're going to wipe his memories because the bad place sent his former girlfriend, Simone, to be part of the experiment, and he would not be able to hold it together around her. Tragically, that also means obliterating his memories of his true love, Eleanor. Michael can't just wipe Simone from Chidi's memory and leave the Eleanor memories. They're all mixed in together. So, for the sake of humanity, they're running the experiment specifically to see if humans are redeemable, whether the original 4 getting better was just a fluke, or whether they actually need to change the point system. After he decides that's the sacrifice he's willing to make, Michael puts together a film showing significant moments for Eleanor and Chidi over the course of the many reboots, which hits you right in the feels. And then Eleanor chats with Janet, who points out this ersatz Good Place she crafted in Marie St. Clair's backyard in the medium place and peopled mostly with people she created is on par with Dante's creation of Inferno, Pandemonium, the circle of hell with all the demons. But she has faith that together they can make it work. Look, the afterlife is just weird. Everything I said makes all kinds of sense if you've seen it from the beginning, and if you haven't, good news, you've got many months before Season 4 premieres this fall. What are you waiting for? Speaking of a 4th season, the Magicians also returned, and when we left these hapless funsters, the Breakbills students had completed their quest, replenished the well, and returned magic to the realms. Unfortunately, they also lost their memories and released a monster who inhabits one of them, Elliot, and occasionally causes destruction. The memory spell is also destructive. When any of them start to remember magic or who they really are, life-threatening chaos sparks in the air around them until they return to their base-level muggle status. Of course, that would get dull fast, so by the end of the episode they've all found each other and they work to reverse the spell. Also, Alice is serving out her sentence in the library, attempting suicide and smuggling cockroaches into her room. Charming. I don't know where all this is heading. Fortunately, they've got a whole season to tell me. Oh, and on a joyous side note, Sci-Fi re-aired more Season 1 episodes. I've now got all the Season 1 episodes that I missed, either on my DVR or scheduled to record and ready to watch once I get this episode recorded and in the rear view, so let's get on with it. Oh, but first I've got to mention another sci-fi production that just premiered this past month. Deadly Class is a brilliantly dark and stylized teen drama. Think Hogwarts for Assassins. These kids, the children of outlaws, spies, and professional hitmen, train with dark and twisted faculty, one of them portrayed by Henry Rollins. I haven't gained a sense of the storyline yet. It's centered around an orphan who got on their radar when, in a drug-fueled frenzy, he led the cops on a deadly chase through a Mardi Gras parade. It is so 80s, and the storylines are so edgy teen. I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes, but it's definitely got off to a good start. Finally, my longtime love of Carol Burnett can be traced and documented as far back as the first episode of this podcast. Well, Sci-Fi is always running episodes of The Twilight Zone at odd hours in the morning, and I saw one of them featured Carol Burnett. A 1962 installment, Cavender is Coming, written potentially as a backdoor pilot for a spin-off about a screw-up guardian angel, was a serious departure for Rod Serling's speculative series, originally featuring a laugh track even, as used never before or since on that series. Jesse White presents Cavender, the bumbling angel sent down to look after Burnett as hapless ticket-taker Agnes Grepp, who is poor and her life is an out-of-control mess. But when Cavender lifts her out of her poverty and instability, provisions her with unimaginable wealth and an upscale apartment filled with society friends, oh, poor Agnes can't get her bearings, and she's sad because all her friends she had in the crappy apartment she was just barely holding on to don't know her anymore. All this wealth and comfort, oh, what a nuisance. It's just too much. Cavender puts things back the way they were and slinks back to heaven, ready to take his comeuppance when his boss notices, hey, what do you know? She's actually happy. Yeah, us poor people, we have no idea what we'd do with money or stability and access to healthcare. Leave that for rich people. This paycheck-to-paycheck thing is plenty good enough for us goofballs. Ha ha ha. Yeah, you can probably tell I'm not a fan. Neither was anyone else. IMDb asserts this Go Nowhere installment is widely regarded as the worst of the series. The whole It's a Wonderful Life thing was so derivative, and yeah, I Dream of Jeannie gave us a genie, Bewitched gave us witchcraft, so sure, why not? A bumbling guardian angel would hardly have been out of place in the primetime lineup, but no, this idea was clearly not going to be it. And then there was Ben Affleck and the Accountant on TNT, quite a few nerd shows I could chat about, and oh hey, in my classic collection I found the finale of the 10-part Beyond Theology series, and I see where I archived recent Late Show with Stephen Colbert interviews by Bradley Whitford and Sarah Paulson, but you know what? I think we've pretty much covered the highlights for this one. Episode 42, Life, This Podcast, and Everything. Douglas Adams. Everything is connected. Boom. Thank you so much for checking in on my video cataloging project. I'm still looking for help tracking info on some medieval-themed sketch comedy in Exhibit E and crowdsourcing at my blog. You can check that out along with catalog listings and audio links at videofuzzy.blogspot.com and past episodes at Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Feedback is always appreciated. You can contact me through my blog or podcast sites or through my VideoFuzzy page on Facebook, or you can follow me at TJVideoFuzzy on Twitter. For VideoFuzzy, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy viewing.
It might be amazing, it might just be scuzzy. We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy.